Hi Reddit, I'm 38F, and I never expected to write one of these posts. But I guess there comes a point where you stop biting your tongue and start telling the whole story. My brother, Sebastian, 35M, got married 3 weeks ago. I wasn't going to post about it because, well, it hurt more than I expected. I kept telling myself, it's just a wedding. One bad night doesn't undo everything. But the more I sit with what happened, the clearer it's become that it wasn't just one bad night. It was the final scene in a very long play, one I never auditioned for, but somehow got cast as the villain in. Let me back up a little. Our family has never exactly been warm and fuzzy, but I tried for years to keep the peace. Growing up, my brother was always the golden boy, not in a loud, flashy way, but the kind of subtle favoritism that chips away at you slowly. When he forgot chores, it was because he was busy with important things. When I did the same, I was disrespectful or lazy. If he wanted money for something, it was an investment. If I asked, it was a waste. Still, I tried to believe it was just typical sibling dynamics. He was younger than me. Maybe they were just trying to protect him. I figured things would even out once we were adults. They didn't. Sebastian went to college out of state, and my parents helped him with tuition, rent, even sent care packages. When I got accepted a few years earlier, they told me they couldn't afford to help much, and that I should look into part-time jobs and scholarships. I did. I worked late nights at the campus library while juggling a double major. I graduated early. No one came to my ceremony. But this isn't about college. Or maybe it is. Maybe it's about everything. Because when Sebastian announced his engagement to Mary Ann, I was genuinely happy for him. I didn't feel jealous. I didn't feel bitter. I thought, maybe this is a fresh start. A chance to be part of something joyful. I was wrong. From the start, I felt excluded. Not overtly, not in a you're not invited kind of way. It was more like being left out of group chats, finding out about events after they happened, being asked to help with things last minute, but never consulted in the planning. They made a big deal about how family-centered the wedding would be, but I was never asked to give a speech or help with the ceremony. I wasn't even seated near the rest of the family at the rehearsal dinner, just placed at the end of a long table next to someone's second cousin who didn't speak English and clearly had no idea who I was. The wedding itself was beautiful, I'll give them that. It was held at this big, rustic vineyard-style venue, all wood beams and hanging lanterns. Marian looked stunning, and Sebastian was glowing. I watched from the third row, smiling politely, clapping at the right times, pretending I didn't notice that my name hadn't been listed in the program under immediate family. But it was the reception that broke me. I arrived early and helped set up some of the centerpieces because I thought it might be a good way to reconnect with everyone. I hadn't seen some of the extended family in years, and I figured being helpful might make me feel like part of things. My mom barely looked at me. My dad gave me one of those shoulder pats that says, "I saw you, now go away." I chalked it up to wedding day stress. People started to trickle in, hugging each other, laughing, taking photos in front of the flower arch. I stood to the side, sipping water, smiling awkwardly when anyone glanced my way. Then Aunt Loretta approached. Now, Loretta has always been blunt, sometimes in a way that feels more like a slap than a comment. She leaned in close and said, "You know, it really seems like you're not welcome here. I mean, you're standing all alone. Don't you have anyone to sit with?" I blinked. "Excuse me." She waved her hand dismissively. "I'm just saying, it's not a good look, sweetie." I didn't respond. What was there to say? When the toast began, I stayed quiet, assuming someone might say something about me eventually. I had helped Sebastian get his first internship, written him a dozen recommendation letters, helped him move apartments 4 times. But I wasn't mentioned. Not once. My name never crossed a single person's lips. I watched them all raise their glasses, my parents, aunts, cousins, even my childhood neighbor who Sebastian hadn't seen in years. And I stood there, invisible. After dinner, I went to the bar to order a sparkling water and a small plate, just grilled veggies and hummus, since I hadn't eaten all day. I handed the bartender my card, but he hesitated. Actually, your family said your tab's on their bill." I blinked again. "Sorry, they told me to just add your order to their tab. Said it'd be easier that way." I looked over and saw my mom talking with Marianne's parents, laughing, completely at ease. I knew she hadn't asked me if I wanted to be included on the tab. I also knew, deep down, that they probably resented me for ordering anything at all. So I smiled. I looked the bartender in the eye and said, Actually, I'll pay for myself. He nodded and ran my card. Simple. Clean. I took my plate and water and walked toward the back patio, where no one could see me. And just as I was finishing my last bite, I heard it. Wait, you can't go. It was my mother's voice. Sharp. Clipped. Not frantic, but cornered. I turned slowly, still holding the now empty plate and water glass, and saw my mother striding toward me across the patio stones. Her shoes clicked with a certain urgency, but her expression didn't match. She wore the same composed, pleasant smile I'd seen her wear at fundraisers and school events growing up. Calm on the surface, even when she was quietly furious underneath. Behind her trailed my father, hands in his pockets, and just a few paces back, Sebastian. He wasn't even looking at me. His eyes were scanning the crowd inside, as if he already regretted being dragged out here. I didn't realize you were leaving, my mom said, her voice tight and controlled. The photographer hasn't done the family portraits yet. I stood up straighter, not defensive, just steady. No one told me when they were happening. She blinked. Well, they were announced. Maybe you didn't hear. I didn't respond. She wasn't actually interested in whether I heard or not. That wasn't the point. She decided it was my fault, and that was that. Dad stepped forward. Look, it's your brother's big day. Can't you just stick around and not make things difficult? I tilted my head slightly. You think I'm the one making things difficult? Sebastian finally looked at me. He had that same polite, strained expression he wore when we were younger, and I tried to tell him that Mom treated us differently. The same look he wore when I called home to say I'd been accepted to graduate school, and he said, Oh, that's cool. It's not a big deal, he said. Just stay for the pictures and the cake. You can leave after that if you want. That sentence landed hard. If you want. As if I hadn't already been on my way out. As if my presence was a mild inconvenience they were trying to manage for the sake of optics. I've already paid for my own meal, I said quietly. Mom frowned. What? Why would you do that? We told the server to put you with the family tab. No one told me. It didn't seem like I was part of that plan. There was a pause. A brief, flickering silence in which my father looked off toward the hills, and Sebastian cleared his throat. My mother's jaw tightened just slightly. You're being very sensitive today, she said. It's a celebration. You should be happy for your brother. I am, I replied. But I also know when I'm not wanted. Now came the shift. I saw it in her eyes. The way the smile dropped just a bit. The way she squared her shoulders. Stop being dramatic, she said, low and clipped. You're not a child anymore, so stop sulking like one. Your brother has been planning this day for over a year. He didn't ask for your attitude. I could feel my fingers clench slightly around the empty plate. I took a breath and calmly set it on a nearby table. I'm not sulking. I'm responding. There's a difference. Dad cut in then, voice low. People are starting to notice. Don't make a scene. That did it. Something in me snapped, but not loudly. Not in a way anyone could see. It was more like the quiet release of pressure after years of slow build-up. I'd spent so long minimizing my reactions that this moment felt oddly peaceful. I haven't said a single word to anyone all night, I said. I didn't ask to be excluded. I didn't ask for a toast. I didn't complain when Aunt Loretta told me I wasn't welcome. I smiled. I sat where I was told. I paid for myself, and I kept quiet. If anyone's making a scene, it's not me. My mother stepped closer, lowering her voice like we were conspirators instead of relatives. You always find a way to make things about you. That's your problem. No, I said softly. My problem is that I keep coming back, thinking this time will be different. That stopped her, just for a moment. Behind her, Sebastian shifted uncomfortably. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere else, back inside, talking to his new in-laws, maybe opening gifts or thanking guests. But he was stuck in this moment with us, and for once, he didn't get to pretend he didn't notice. I think I'm going to head out, I said. Wait, my mother said again, her voice now carrying a hint of panic. We haven't done the pictures. Right, I said. The family photos. I'm not needed in those, am I? She hesitated. That pause said more than any answer would have. And then, as if on cue, someone opened the doors to the reception hall and called out, Sebastian, photos are starting. He turned, grateful for the excuse, and started walking away. Not a word to me. Not even a glance. My dad gave me a look, something between disappointment and cold resignation, and followed him. I watched as my mother lingered. Her hands were clasped tightly in front of her, her smile brittle. You don't have to do this. If you leave now, It'll just look like you were trying to ruin things. I gave her a small smile. I'm not ruining anything. I'm just done pretending. Then I turned and walked toward the parking lot. But I wasn't 5 steps past the patio lights when I heard fast footsteps behind me. I stopped, expecting maybe a final jab or plea from my mother. Instead, it was someone I hadn't spoken to all evening. "Hey," said a voice behind me. I turned to find Mary Ann's younger sister, Clara, barely 20, sweet, and not really involved in any of the planning. She looked nervous, like she wasn't sure she should be talking to me. I just wanted to say, "I noticed what happened. With everything. And I'm sorry. That was messed up." I nodded, unsure what to say. She fidgeted with the edge of her shawl. "I've only known them for 2 years, and even I could tell they treat you like an outsider." That made me pause. Clara took a breath. "I don't know if this means anything, but I thought your toast at the rehearsal dinner was really kind. I heard you helped Sebastian get his first job. He never mentions that." I raised an eyebrow. "He doesn't." She shook her head. "No. He always makes it sound like he got there on his own. But I've been around enough family dinners to know who they like and who they pretend not to see." I gave her a small, grateful smile. She shrugged. "Anyway, I just thought you should hear that." Then she left, walking back toward the glowing hall, her heels clicking gently on the stones. And I stood there, alone in the dark, watching through the window as the photographer arranged everyone: my parents, Sebastian, the in-laws, the cousins, Aunt Loretta, all smiling, all posing. They didn't even look toward the door. I turned, walked to my car, and sat in the driver's seat for a long time without starting the engine. The next morning, I woke up with that strange, clear-headed calm you get after a long storm. You know the feeling, the kind that settles in your chest once you realize that there's nothing left to hold on to, that something inside you has closed for good. I wasn't angry in the explosive, yelling sense. I wasn't even surprised. I was focused. And in that silence, sitting in my kitchen with a cup of coffee and my phone screen still showing the last photo someone had tagged from the wedding, one that, of course, I was not in, I began to think clearly for the first time in years. I had let so many things go. Too many. All those birthdays I was asked to help out with, but never got a thank you. All the times I loaned Sebastian money when he was between jobs, told it was just temporary, and never saw a cent back. The times my parents asked me to watch their house, their dogs, run errands when they were out of town, but when I moved apartments last year, they were too busy to lend a hand. It wasn't the favors that stung, it was the quiet erasure. The sense that I was only part of the family when I was useful, and even then, not truly part of it. But I'd kept receipts. Figuratively, and in many cases, literally. See, I'm an archivist. That's not just a poetic way of saying I'm organized. I work for a local museum, and my job revolves around preserving records, documents, histories, things people forget are important until they suddenly matter. So maybe it's habit or instinct, but I keep detailed logs of things. Not obsessively, just carefully. Emails, texts, even voicemails, financial transactions, signed agreements, notes, names, and I had plenty involving my family. Like the time I helped Sebastian with a major freelance project 5 years ago. He was under a tight deadline and asked if I could look it over. I ended up rewriting large chunks of it. He submitted it to the client and got a permanent contract because of it. I had the email where he asked for help and the Word document with my track changes still saved. Or the landscaping job I organized for my parents when they claimed they couldn't afford to hire someone and wouldn't know where to start. I researched contractors, negotiated the rate, even paid the deposit, then never got paid back. They swore I'd offered to gift it to them. I still had the invoice in my folder, dated with my name as client. Or the email where Aunt Loretta asked me to edit her grant application. Not a small favor. Mind you, it was a 22-page proposal, riddled with mistakes, and due the next morning. I'd stayed up until 2 a.m. fixing it. She got the funding, never even said thank you. And at the wedding, she'd called me invisible. Funny how people forget when it benefits them. But I didn't. That day, after the wedding, I opened a blank notebook. Not digital, paper. Something permanent. At the top, I wrote, "They think I'll always be quiet." Underneath, I started listing names. Not just the obvious ones, Sebastian, Mom, Dad, Aunt Loretta, but the enablers. The people who stayed silent, looked the other way, or benefited from my efforts and acted like it was owed to them. I didn't have a clear plan yet. I wasn't out for some cartoon-style revenge plot, but I knew what I wanted. For them to feel the silence they'd pushed me into. I wanted them to watch doors close without knowing why. I wanted their comfort to erode, one layer at a time. And I would start small. I began with Sebastian. I knew his resume. I'd helped him write it. I also knew that the work I'd edited for him, the project that launched his current job, was still on his portfolio site. My words, my structure, my formatting, only his name attached. I didn't confront him. I didn't ask for credit. Instead, I created a LinkedIn post, professional, polite, innocuous. I shared a story about how I'd helped a family member prepare a freelance proposal years ago, how it had been a challenge with tight deadlines, and how proud I'd been of the final result. I included a screenshot of one paragraph from the original document with my initials in the comments. Just a snippet. Nothing damaging. Just enough to match the final version on his website, word for word. The post wasn't popular. It didn't go viral. But one of my former colleagues, now working at the same firm Sebastian just joined, liked it. 2 days later, Sebastian texted me. Sebastian, hey, weird question, but why did you post that thing on LinkedIn? Me. Just sharing old work. What? He didn't reply. That was fine. Then came the second thread, my parents. They'd recently applied to refinance their house. I knew this because they'd used me as a reference, without asking. The bank had called me 2 months ago to verify their income and stability, and I'd done what I always did. Answered politely, filled in the gaps, smoothed over their inconsistencies. But now I was under no obligation. So I called the mortgage broker and calmly explained that I'd been listed as a reference without permission. I didn't lie. I simply said I could no longer vouch for their financial consistency or long-term planning. Again, no drama, no confrontation, just quiet erosion. A week later, my mother called, voice full of tension. We're having trouble with the refinance. Something about flagged references. Did you say anything? I didn't lie. I just said I wasn't comfortable being listed anymore. That's all. A pause. You could have told us first. Like how you told me I was part of the family tab. Another pause. You're being spiteful. No. I said, calm as ever. I'm setting boundaries. And then came Aunt Loretta. She was preparing for a charity gala and, as usual, needed help with her speech. She sent me an email titled Quick Favor with a 5-page draft and a request to polish it up like last time. I opened it, read through the speech, then closed the file. I didn't respond. 3 days later, she followed up. Hey, just wondering if you got my message. Deadline's coming up. Still, I said nothing. The day after the gala, I got a final message. Well, thanks so much for the help. Or lack of it. I smiled. No fight. No explanation. Just silence. But the most deliberate move came next, one I'd been saving for years without realizing it. When our grandfather passed away, he left a modest inheritance to be split among the grandchildren. But I discovered, through a stray email, that my parents had asked the executor to hold on to my share. For my own good, they'd said. Because I wasn't good with money. At the time, I didn't push it. I didn't want to believe they'd mislead me. But now I was ready. I contacted the estate attorney directly. I asked for a record of distributions. He was hesitant at first, but after verifying my identity, he sent the document. My name was missing from the list. The money had been split 3 ways, between Sebastian, my cousin Ezra, and our other cousin Matilda. I sat with that for a while, let it settle in my chest like a stone. Then I made an appointment. I wasn't sure yet whether I'd pursue it legally. Maybe I would. Maybe I'd let it hang over them like a quiet cloud. Either way, I wouldn't tell them I knew. Not yet. That was part of the plan. Let them feel like everything was normal while the ground beneath them shifted, inch by inch. And still, I said nothing. At least, not until Sebastian's promotion party. Sebastian's promotion party was hosted at a sleek rooftop venue downtown. Not the kind of place he could have afforded a few years ago. But now, with his new title and a company car, he was glowing, literally and figuratively. The invite came via a group text, one I was only added to 2 days before the event. I hadn't planned on going, at first, but something in me said no go, not to cause a scene, not for attention, but because for once, I wanted them to see me. Not the version they'd constructed, not the role they had written for me, but me, standing fully in my truth. I wore a simple navy dress, understated but clean and professional. I arrived just as the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows over the city skyline. People were already milling about with little plates and glasses, music playing softly in the background. Sebastian stood near the center, laughing with a few co-workers, completely in his element. I didn't make an entrance. I just walked in, took a deep breath, and stood near the railing, quietly observing. About 10 minutes in, my mother noticed me. She was standing near the bar, talking to Aunt Loretta, both of them dressed in their usual too-loud-for-the-room fashion. Her smile faltered the moment her eyes met mine. I watched her whisper something, and Loretta turned, scanned me up and down, and gave a small scoff. Then, as expected, they made their way over. "You didn't RSVP," my mother said, folding her arms tightly. "I wasn't sure I'd come," I said simply. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Well, it's a bit late to start being supportive, don't you think?" Aunt Loretta added. "Let's not make tonight about you." I nodded. "That's exactly my plan." They blinked. My mother opened her mouth to speak, but I turned away from them and walked toward the stage where a mic had been set up, clearly for toasts. Sebastian had just stepped up to it, tapping gently as the music faded and the crowd quieted. "I just want to say thank you," he began. "This promotion means the world to me. I worked really hard for it, and I'm proud of what I've built." I raised my hand, calmly, and he paused. "May I add something?" There was a small ripple in the room. Confused glances. He hesitated, then shrugged. "Sure." I took the mic. "Hi. I won't take long." I began, scanning the crowd. "I just wanted to share a brief story about my brother. About 5 years ago, he had an opportunity to pitch to a major client. He was under pressure, overwhelmed, and asked for help. I worked with him for hours, editing, rewriting, polishing. He got the job. The room was still. I kept my voice calm. For years, I stayed quiet. I helped with resumes, cover letters, strategy documents. I never asked for credit. And when I wasn't needed, I was ignored. Passed over at family events. Left out of photos. Toasts. Plans. I paused, letting the silence stretch. But a few months ago, I decided to stop being useful to people who only remember me when they need something. I stopped replying to late-night favors. I stopped filling in the blanks. I stopped accepting the role they gave me. I turned my gaze directly toward my parents. I also found out I was left out of my grandfather's inheritance. Not by mistake, but by manipulation. And I want you all to know that legal proceedings have begun. I'm not hiding anymore. And I'm not covering for anyone. My mother's face had gone pale. My father, seated at a corner table, was rigid. Sebastian stepped forward slightly. "Is this really necessary?" I handed him the mic back. "Yes, it is." I turned and walked off the small stage. There were no cheers, no claps, just stunned silence. Some people looked shocked, others avoided my gaze. A few nodded, just barely. I didn't need their support. I hadn't come for that. As I moved through the crowd to leave, Clara, Marianne's younger sister, met me near the exit. "I heard everything," she whispered. "Good for you." I smiled. "Thanks." Then I walked out. In the weeks that followed, the silence from my family was deafening. No calls, no texts. I had, in their minds, humiliated them, exposed things they'd worked hard to keep hidden. To them, I had betrayed the image. But for the first time, I wasn't hurt by it. I felt free. The legal proceedings regarding the inheritance went smoothly. Turns out, the estate lawyer had suspected something odd and was relieved someone finally brought it forward. My portion had been quietly moved into a separate trust by my grandfather, but my parents had tried to block access. The lawyer rectified it and ensured restitution. Sebastian lost his spot on a committee at work. Turns out, someone had forwarded my LinkedIn post and the document comparison to the internal review board. No job was lost, but his credibility took a hit. He reached out once, via email. No apology, just a carefully worded note. "I think we could have handled this privately." I never replied. Aunt Loretta? She emailed a draft of her next proposal to the wrong contact. Her committee received an early version filled with spelling errors and outdated references. I had nothing to do with that one, but it felt poetic. My parents never acknowledged the inheritance issue. Not once. Instead, they pretended nothing happened. My mother sent me a birthday card 2 months later. Blank inside. I didn't send one back. Today, things are quiet. Peaceful even. I've built a small circle of people who see me, not for what I can do for them, but for who I am. I no longer show up where I'm not valued. I no longer try to win over people who made their choice long ago. Some people say family is everything. I say family is who shows up when it matters. The rest? They made me feel invisible for years. But in the end, I turned the spotlight right back on them and walked away without a shadow following me. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts in the comments. If you like this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this.